Hi, and welcome to Filmmaker's Compass special episode of Total Rewind with D-Man and
CP.
All right, man. Well, I'm really excited for this episode because it's a little bit different than usual. So, what we're planning on doing is introducing a new segment to Filmmaker's Compass called Total Rewind, which is where just you and I kind of have a discussion about movies, a different movie every other week. And I'm really excited for the movie on this week's show. But before we dive into that, I did want to throw it over to you. It's the holiday season. How's it going?
It's pretty good, man. It's pretty good.
You get all your shopping done?
Oh, dude, I'm not even close. I'll probably be shopping until the 24th.
How many Christmas movies have you watched already?
I've only watched like 4 or 5, I think.
I have seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, Elf, and The Santa Claus, but that's it so far. So 3 for me.
Wow.
Well, and then the movie we're going to talk about.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to watch that one.
Yeah, well, of course. But I didn't want to say it. I was trying to hold it for a reveal, which I guess we can just do now, which this week on Total Rewind, we're going to be talking about Home Alone.
Home Alone
Is a perennial Christmas classic. Macaulay Culkin mania, really still to this day. He's making commercials about it. He still, kind of does a tour and talks about his time on the 2 movies, Home Alone 1 and 2. I wanted to start off the discussion on Home Alone by just kind of asking, where do you rank Home Alone amongst all the Christmas classics?
I mean, I would rank it as, in my mind, like number 1 or 2.
Like, it's one of your favorite Christmas movies.
I think it's tough to beat, dude.
I mean, there's a lot of good ones. Obviously, through the years, you got, the Christmas Vacations, Christmas Story. Obviously, I said Elf, Santa Claus, Home Alone. But yeah, for me, I think Home Alone is the clear-cut number 1. That's why, hey, for this holiday episode of Total Rewind, I was all on board with Home Alone as our pick for our first, movie. It's just so good.
Well, I think that's an understatement. I mean, now as kind of those of us who saw Home Alone as kids have grown up, right? I think it's much more a part of Christmas tradition than it was in the 1990s.
And to this day, it still airs, on, I don't know, countless TV channels. It just got picked up by Disney Plus, which I'm pretty sure like everybody has.
Yeah, on the off chance you didn't see Home Alone in the last, since it came out 30 years ago, catch it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, right. It's pretty much a tradition for most people to watch it. I would be shocked if there was someone our age that hasn't seen it, like just by chance, right? You go to Christmas parties and stuff, and like people just have it on.
Yeah.
For flipping channels, it's like impossible not to land on like, oh, let me watch Home Alone. I heard that was good.
Yeah, actually, if you've never seen Home Alone and you are listening to this show, please tweet us because we would love to start that conversation with you.
I would like to know how someone's made it this long. I feel like if you've made it this long, you're deliberately avoiding it.
Yeah, right.
That's the only conclusion. That's the only logical conclusion I can come to. Since this is, a discussion about movies, I did want to talk a little bit about just yours and mine's thoughts about the actual movie. Because something that always, sticks with me as just a story arc is that the movie is really like well-rounded. It closes most of the plot threads that it kind of opens in the beginning. And they do such a good job of kind of hitting home the point of family and making the holidays fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like they really do. Like when you think about like, the South Bend Shovel Slayer, which, shout out to Indiana, South Bend, because we're from there. So I knew that guy. No, I'm just kidding. They introduce all these things about how like Kevin is inept. He does, pack a suitcase. Like he doesn't know how to do anything. By the end, they have him literally, I think they even make fun of it at the end where he's like, he doesn't even know how to do this, and he's buying groceries. Like they wrap up that arc. Obviously, he's home alone. His family returns. Spoiler alert. And then there's the South Bend Shovel Slayer, who you get his complete arc. The bandits get arrested. Like everything that's put into motion, it's a really well-rounded film. And for that reason alone, I think it's incredibly satisfying.
Well, I think I guess I really see two things. I think it fundamentally comes down to the writing of Home Alone. John Hughes is a master screenwriter, and he does a great job of kind of weaving this ridiculous storyline of forgetting a kid on your flight to France, and he makes it plausible, right? He plants all the little pieces that are needed for us to buy into the fact that this could actually happen. And then
that really is, you think back to the 90s, like it sounds ludicrous now to think like you could leave a kid at home and not be able to get in contact with them. But like, the way the power lines go down and that guy's like, the phone lines are a mess. It's going to take Maudeville a couple of days before they can patch it up. Right? Like they're laying all these little story nuggets just to get us to
right. Like even the garage doors are open. So he thinks that the family disappeared, even though their cars are there. Right. Like they do a really good job.
And I think you just hit on the last point, which is there's a little bit of like fantastical whimsy to it, right? He's a kid and thinks that his wish made his family disappear. That helps you buy into it too. It's not like he's like, oh, they went to France without me.
Yeah. And then beyond Hughes's screenwriting, Columbus comes in as a director and adds the element of kind of magic and heart that we've come to expect from his movies. And I think that, a really well-crafted screenplay that's punched up in the right elements to bring the story to the emotional beats that you need to hit, I think that's what's made it so lasting and so impactful.
And I think, the final ingredient really is just the memorable characters. You have his brother Buzz, who's, kind of that douche older brother. You have his uncle Frank, who's like this real like pessimistic cheapskate. You have obviously the Wet Bandits. And then of course there's Kevin, who's very memorable. His mom, who is on a mission. You even have like the Kenosha Kickers, and John Candy playing. I can't remember his name.
Gus Polanski.
Yeah, there you go.
The Midwest.
I love when she's like, what does she say? She's like. Or he's
These
like, we sold 34 copies of that, and she's like, oh, in Chicago? He's like, no, Sheboygan. We're real big in Sheboygan. But I think, that's the last major thing is they really did combine all these memorable characters where everybody, that nobody in there is just like throwaway.
Yeah.
So and then even
the character of
Shovel Slayer,
even the character of Fuller, right, who's Kit McCulkey, who goes on to be Roman in the HBO series Succession.
Oh yeah,
right. He seems like a totally, this is his first acting gig as a kid, and he's totally memorable as the kid who wets his pants and seems to celebrate that fact.
I love that line too. It's like, about him. He wets the bed. He'll pee all over me. Well, okay. If we're, I've quoted a few lines by now. If I throw it over to you, like, what is your favorite exchange in Home Alone? Because really, it's funny because even as an adult, that movie makes me laugh out loud.
Well, are you talking about in terms of the comedy or in terms of just the movie all out?
What's your favorite? All out.
I think it's the sequence where Kevin finally meets the Shovel Slayer in the church.
Okay, that's like favorite scene.
Well, that's the movie that has a lot of like they really punched up the heart, and obviously the main theme of the story is this this idea about family, right?
Right.
But that's the second, the underlying beat, which is it's okay to be afraid, and I like that they have the conversation where Kevin even calls him out and he says, "Aren't you a little too old to be afraid?"
You're never too old to be afraid.
Yeah, you can be too old for a lot of things, but you're never too old to be afraid.
I always love he talks about, he's like, my grandma got me a sweater with a big bird did it on. He's like, oh, that's nice. He's like, not for a kid in the third grade. Had a friend who got a pair of dinosaur pajamas, got nailed. I think my favorite scene though is when he's getting sent up to the attic, because it's such a dramatization of like what it's like being a kid, right? Nobody's listening to him. He doesn't feel seen. But I just love the exchange with his mom where he's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, okay, get upstairs. And he's like, I don't want any family. Families stink. And she's like, well, then maybe you should ask Santa for a new family. And he says something along the lines of like, I
don't want to see you again for the rest of my life.
Yeah. She's like, you'll wake up tomorrow and feel pretty bad if you don't have a family. And he's like, I hope I never see any of you jerks again. It just sounds like such a little kid exchange, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he goes upstairs and he's like, I hope they all just disappear. And I don't know, it's a great kickoff because on one hand, he's being like a little jerk, but on the other hand, you're kind of like, I get it. Like, this is a house full of family and kids and you've totally been overlooked. And they hit the point home, overlooking him because they literally forget him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But then as far as funny lines go, I think the Wet Bandits steal it for me. The two lines that are my favorite are later. Harry's telling Marv, he's like, we'll go grab a bite to eat and come back around 9:00. And he's like, yeah, 9:00. Kids are scared of the dark. And he's like, you're afraid of the dark too, Marv. And he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, yeah, you are. And he's like, not. And they like run off. They're like little kids themselves. And then I love when after the whole like spider sequence, they run upstairs and they look out the window. And he's like, maybe he committed suicide. And you're like, who wrote that? I feel like that had to be improvised.
Yeah. I don't know. Obviously, speaking of improvisation, I mean, almost everything John Candy did in that movie is apparently improvised.
Fun fact about his role in that movie, I didn't know this, but apparently he did that role as a favor to John Hughes, so he only got paid like $400.
Well, they got their money's worth.
Yeah, right? He came in, I guess he was there for like 24 hours or something, maybe like 2 days. Like he did like 12-hour days or something like. And he made $400, and they basically did all his scenes at once, which I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But the reason I know that is because the fun fact was that the guy who plays the pizza kid, he got paid $500. So he made more than John Candy.
Well, that's his claim to fame, I bet. He made more money in a movie than John Candy did.
Well, cheese pizza, you got to get it. But anyway, I did also want to touch, obviously I think you and I could just quote lines and reminisce about Home Alone for, an entire evening if we wanted. But I also wanted to ask you, why do you think Home Alone is so beloved, all these years later? Right? It's weird because a lot of movies kind of come and go, or they're popular in their time. But like you said, Home Alone's been around for 30 years now. So what do you think it is about that? I know we touched earlier on heart.
I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think that's a lot of it. I think it comes down to two things. And the first thing, I'm going to look towards Columbus as the director. He said that he set out trying to, with the intention of making a timeless Christmas movie. And there's a lot of elements in that which you can see where, he intentionally crafted moments in the film to add that timeless quality. Like one of the last scenes in the movie when Kevin looks out the window and the snow's falling, and it's where the Shovel Slayer finally makes up with his son, right?
Right.
Or that early scene when he first runs out the door after the family's gone, and it's just him, and it's all white. Like, he really captured quintessential Christmas moments in the movie. He goes to see Santa. He runs across the ice rink. Like, all these things that we kind of in many ways take for granted as just part of the holiday season. He was very conscious of, and they're focal points of the film.
That's a good point.
I mean, even to the point that, I mean, I know you've heard this too about the art direction. They were very intentional in making sure that everything in the house is shades of green and red. And that's just so that the whole place looks like this kind of Christmas card-esque fantasy.
Yeah, and like I heard as well, to your timeless quality, they also deliberately like omitted a lot of different technology in the original, to the point where like the TV would only show like black and white movies, with the exception of The Grinch, which is an older movie.
Yeah.
But with the idea of trying to not make it feel like it's taking place in the 90s, right? They wanted to make it feel like in the 90s it's taking place kind of anytime in the last few decades.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they do things, you know, like the Angels with Filthy Souls is like this old kind of black and white movie. Another like classic thing from Home Alone. I mean, everything they do is just so well done.
Yeah. And they were just conscious of it the entire time. And I think it's funny because I know I texted you this earlier. The original review of the film in the Chicago Tribune, they essentially accuse Christopher Columbus of trying too hard to make a timeless Christmas classic. And they say he falls short, which in hindsight, we know that's now not the case 30 years later, because it is a timeless Christmas movie. I think the other thing, though, aside from the intentional, you know, focus on the timelessness of Christmas, is he makes a movie that speaks to the child within all of us, right?
Oh, that's a really good point.
We've all grown up feeling like our family doesn't see us. We've all grown up feeling invisible. We've all grown up at times in our life where we felt powerless. And we've also grown up at times where we felt afraid. And Kevin is a character speaking to the child within all of us who is going through all these emotions that we can relate to. And he does it in a way where, you know, I think the kid within us is all kind of envious that he gets to, you know, defend his house and square off against the wet bandits. And, you know, as a kid, he is victorious over the adults. And as a kid, he survives without his parents. And I think that's kind of, that speaks to all of us deep down, because we like to, you know, we still feel like kids sometimes. And when we were kids, we always wanted those moments of triumph that he is able to achieve.
Now, let me ask you a little bit about the controversial kind of plot elements, which got, you know, some negative reception, which to fans of the movie, they love it. But I mean, from critics, that was kind of the defending the house sequence, where a lot of people felt that, you know, the wet bandits essentially got their asses kicked, and they found it to be rather kind of like unbelievable. And this is, you know, totally played up to a higher degree in Home Alone 2. But even in 1, you know, like taking paint cans to the face, or like falling from a second story window after, you know, the ropes set on fire. And like, there were things about it that people criticized. Did you see that even as a kid, or did it have the intended effect of almost feeling more like Looney Tunes, right?
Well, I think as a kid, that was always my favorite part of the movie. I don't know about you, my favorite part as a kid was always when he was squaring off against the bandits. And it felt like cartoons because that's what we saw on television. As an adult, that's my least favorite part of the movie. I like all the other sentimental, you know, holiday-esque story points in you know, throughout the rest of the movie. But I think as a kid, I don't think we see it as violence as it actually is. I know that they did a study, I don't know, 20 years ago, about television, right, and violence on TV. And they did talk about the fact how the most violent thing that kids could possibly watch on television was cartoons. So as kids, I don't think we saw it for the violence that the adults at the time and the critics at the time and the adults that we are now see it. I think we just see it as sort of comedic violence because it is done in a comedic fashion. And
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. That never bothered me. Like, I never thought to myself, I was like, oh, this is grotesque or like how terrible. But I mean, I guess I could see where, obviously, if you're not leaning into and just having fun with it, you're like, this is so over the top. Like,
Well, and I think it also
yeah, I
helps that
guess.
Marv and Harry are bad guys.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they are breaking into Kevin's house and trying to rob it, and they know he's there. And I mean, they're bad dudes. They're funny, but they're bad guys. So I think that in some ways that kind of gives you a little bit more of an excuse in the sense that I guess it's more of a justifiable use of force.
Yeah, and again, like they never actually like things happen, right? Like his head gets set on fire or like this and that, and they look beat like bruised and beat up, but they're never like seriously injured, you know?
No, you're right.
Or
You're right. I mean, they're never as severely
who
injured
knows,
as
maybe
it
Marv
seems like
got
they
like
should be.
tetanus or something. Because they really do, like once you start going through all the things, like, uh one of them like steps on a nail, they get an iron to the face, they both fall down the same sets of stairs like two or three times, you got a blowtorch to the head, paint cans to the face. I mean, they really get their asses kicked.
No, and sadly, dude, I think the worst one actually for me is when he steps on those Christmas ornaments.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. Yeah, and he like, oh my gosh. Well,
That just seems painful.
what is interesting too is I pulled up on here some trivia about the film.
Uh-huh.
And one of the interesting things when we're talking about the pranks is, did you know that they actually, Daniel Stern let them put a spider on his face for that sequence?
I mean, I guess it would have made sense. I don't know how else they would have done it in the night, in 1991 or whatever, 1990.
Yeah, I think they recorded the scream in post. Obviously, they didn't want to like scare the spider, but he actually agreed. It says he actually agreed to let them put the spider on his face for one take, and that's what they got.
Wow,
That's pretty awesome,
commitment.
especially
Yeah.
because like I wonder if his agent, if they had to have like a behind the scenes negotiation. Because I mean, I have no idea at what point that was added to the script. I mean, the spider's there throughout, so I'm assuming there's going to be a payoff somewhere. But I mean, did they know early on that it was going to be on someone's face?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. Well, if you want, I mean, because I just got some trivia here, we can run through some facts.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's check it out.
One of the things that was always funny, did you know that they originally had Robert De Niro in mind for Joe Pesci's part, and he declined and just kind of gave Joe Pesci out as a reference? I guess they'd already thought about him. Obviously, those two are connected, so it wasn't like he wasn't on their radar, but I guess he kind of like passed it along.
I didn't know that. I did always wonder what, Joe Pesci was doing in a kids movie.
Well, and what's funny is I guess like he actually had trouble saying his lines because he was so used to cursing that he kept saying the F word. And when you hear him in the movie go like fridge, like kind of mumbling, I guess that was his way of avoiding cursing because he just couldn't do it.
Because everything else he did with Scorsese and just swore all the time.
Yeah, like, I don't know. That was just like his personality, which, again, it's kind of funny because it's like you're an actor, but at the same time, like, if he had trouble with it, so he kind of like added that, and I guess that's what he's doing. He's saying the word fridge, which, yeah, I did not know that.
Okay, that's cool.
Something else that's really interesting, and I don't know if it's so much trivia as more like just kind of like a production note, but almost everything was filmed in Chicago. I guess John Hughes, well, a lot of his movies are set
he does
in
a
Chicago.
lot in Chicago.
But so you can actually like go, there's like a, obviously now you just probably go to Google Maps and there's like a tour and you can go around and see all the different locations. But apparently the house, they could not film in the house. So they actually built the entire interior of the home inside a high school gymnasium in that Chicago suburb, which is crazy. And then they home based out of the high school.
And now if I'm right, I think I read that that's the same high school that he filmed The Breakfast Club in.
I don't see that, but I mean, you're probably right. That would make sense. So, more trivia. The ornaments which Marv steps on, apparently those were candy and not glass, but I
Okay.
don't see how that would help at all.
Yeah, right. Well,
Like,
I thought I read that he had like rubber feet over his actual feet when he did all the barefoot stunts.
yeah, it does say that here. You're right.
Gotcha.
So, another fun fact is that Macaulay Culkin is the person who drew the map that his character uses to set all the traps.
You mean the one that's signed by Kevin McAllister?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, man. Let's see here. We got a couple different ones. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay, John Candy filmed his part for only one day, 23-hour day. That's what it
Wow.
was. I had heard that before, so that was something that always stuck with me because I was like, man, I had no idea. You would think, at that time he was like a big star that, I mean, for his cameo, he would get paid a lot of money, but not really.
But he had done a couple films with John Hughes by that point, right? I think they did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Uncle Buck, at least.
Yeah.
Those two.
Yeah. No, you're right. And then it says Macaulay Culkin's stunt double was a very short 30-year-old man. So about our age.
That's cool.
So, yeah, that's pretty funny. It says the last scene filmed was the one in which Kevin is running through the water-filled basement, and it was used in the high school's swimming pool. Or filmed in the high school's swimming pool.
Oh, okay.
So, and then the first scene is the scene where he's at the shop buying a toothbrush.
And we don't know if that toothbrush was approved by the American Dental Association or not.
We never found out. I don't know if it matters, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, there's just like pages and pages of trivia here. But the final thing I wanted to touch on, and we haven't talked about it yet, but it has to be mentioned, is John Williams' score.
Oh my gosh. I think that ends to the timeless fantasy quality of the movie, just because if they had done what I feel like so many other Christmas movies do, which is just borrow, and create a Christmas soundtrack, which, they borrow Christmas music for it. It's not the same as the Home Alone theme. Dude, it's just so perfect.
Yeah, like I would want to hear that live. I don't know if you ever have. I know, like, I've been to like Star Wars in concert, and they do those John Williams tours. But I mean, I would love to hear that performed. It's just, what is it called? Somewhere in My Memory.
Mm-hmm.
And then Home Alone main theme. But it's just so good. Even like the Wet Bandits theme, Kevin, everything works so well. And I mean, it's crazy because at that point, John Williams, if you go Home Alone and later, still has yet to make some of his most iconic scores. Right at that point, he's already like super well known for Jaws and Star Wars and E.T. and Indiana Jones. Then he makes like Home Alone, Jurassic Park, Harry Potter.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Duel of the Fates and like more Star Wars and all this stuff. I'm like, gosh, the guy was only just getting started.
I know, dude, it's crazy.
He's truly amazing. Like, his stuff is just so good. It's always cool when you see somebody that is just like on another level.
Like everything they touch is just gold.
Yeah, like you're just like, man, this guy is so good. Like, other people can try to be him, but like, I mean, how are you going to top John Williams?
Well, and I think the fact that they were able to score John Williams to score the movie, I'm sure that really notched it up and just cemented it into what it is. Because if you take out the music, I mean, it's still a funny movie. There's still a great cut. It's entertaining, but I don't know if it has the lasting quality and the enduring quality that we love.
Yeah, it's weird because some movies have like iconic themes, but I don't know that theme, we associate it now with the movie, right? Like you think like Raiders of the Lost Ark and different things, but a movie like Home Alone or Star Wars, if you were to take those out and put something else in, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if it works.
Yeah,
at
right.
least as well. Where other movies, it's like, sure, obviously that's the best choice, but I mean, the movie still works pretty good if you don't have it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Home Alone's totally one of those. Hey, while we're still going, Chris Farley auditioned for the role of Santa Claus and didn't get it.
That's kind of funny.
So that is funny. Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, there's just so much trivia here. It'd be fun to go through all of it, but those were some of my favorites.
And I think a lot of the movie hinges on Macaulay Culkin as an actor. I mean, it's really amazing. I was watching it just the other day, knowing we were going to talk about it, and he has great screen presence as a kid. He has great line delivery as a kid. And it's kind of amazing that essentially they made a movie with the intention of putting a kid in the starring role, and he carries the movie really well.
Yeah, he has so much charisma. He actually is really funny, and he has a charm to him, which wasn't lost on everybody. I think he did. Was it Uncle Buck?
Yeah.
And everybody, like you said, everybody loved him. They kind of already had him in mind for the role and all that. But when you think back to the '90s, I mean, we were alive when this movie came out. Do you remember like the Macaulay Culkin mania?
Yeah, kind of.
For that time, I mean, he did like all the late night talk shows. Obviously, they got Home Alone 2 out like ASAP before he went through puberty. But and then I mean, it's weird because he's done other movies, generally a little bit more like indie or different stuff through the years. But I mean, it's just funny because even to this day, like last year, he did a Home Alone Christmas commercial for like
for Google
Home or something. Like it's a defining role, and I feel like it's weird because I haven't ever heard his thoughts directly from him, but it seemed like he may have resented some of it for a while, some of the like crazy fame and the fact that like when you do a holiday movie, it just comes back every year, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, it's the 20th anniversary. It's like, nope, it's Christmas again. And we all love Macaulay Culkin. And yeah. I feel like I know he does a podcast now and he's done some different stuff. I'll have to check that out because, hey, I love podcasts. But it just seems like he's leaned into it a little bit more now and is kind of like just embracing it as like, it's pretty dope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, did you ever see the third one? And I think there's now like 5 that they have made.
Is that the one with like Alex Linz or I don't know the actor's name.
The point is, I saw it one time, I think when I was a kid, and I was like, this movie is just terrible. And I think part of it is the fact that I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why it's bad, but I think part of it is that Macaulay Culkin, as a kid, really is the epitome of that role, and he carries it well. And you're watching other kids, and they just don't hold up in the same way.
And that's why, like, I think you had mentioned earlier, or maybe not even on the show, but you had mentioned to me that like Disney Plus wants to like do a remake.
Yeah, I just saw on Twitter that they announced that they're doing a remake, and they cast the lead in Jojo Rabbit to play the new kid in Home Alone. And he's a really talented actor. I mean, Jojo Rabbit was a great movie. I enjoyed it, but I don't know why we need to be remaking and rebooting Home Alone. I think it's pretty much perfect the way it is.
Well, and in a strange way, part of the enduring charm of that film is the
Archie
family
Yates.
and the characters.
That's the kid from
Jojo
Rabbit.
Gotcha. But like the characters and stuff from this movie. Now, I don't know if they're going to do a remake, in the sense of like they're actually going to recast the McAllister family, or if it's going to be a different family at Christmas time with like, different robbers, or if it'll be the Wet Bandits. But I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it needs to be done. Will you watch it?
I'm sure I'll watch it. But I mean, they've made 5 Home Alone movies. One of them's great, one of them's good, and the other 3 are pretty much abysmal.
Wow, they've made 5?
Yeah, I was looking that up. Apparently the last one came out in like 2012.
That's unreal.
And I'm just like, okay, you know, you don't always strike lightning twice, you know. Or
yeah, I mean, it's weird because can't capture lightning in a bottle, or
that's it.
I don't know, something. It's funny because like Home Alone 2, essentially, if you like, it has almost like identical plot points. They just move
identical
the setting.
beats. They even they take the same jokes and rework them. Like kids are scared of the park instead of kids are scared of the dark.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like it's the same stuff. You know, there's the person who frightens Kevin that he ends up befriending and sharing his child. You know, through his childhood lenses of the world, he's able to, change the hearts of these older, hardened adults. Right? Like it's the same stuff throughout the entire movie, and I think part of the reason why people tolerate and like Home Alone 2 is because it kind of gives you exactly what you want, which is more of Home Alone 1.
Well, and I think that's why Home Alone 2, even to this day, like it almost feels like just a natural, like if you really liked hanging out with these characters, like it's hard not to like the second one.
Yeah.
Because obviously they go to New York and like that's fun for a change of setting, but I mean they're just funny to be around, right? The wet bandits, the family when they're stuck in Florida, they drive up to that motel and he's like, I don't remember it being like this on our honeymoon, like. They're just funny.
No, you're right. You're totally right.
So, well, that, I mean, kind of wraps up our discussion on Home Alone. Obviously, we would love to hear what all of our listeners' thoughts are on the movie. If you have any favorite lines, if you actually hate it, if you've never seen it.
Ooh, if you hate it, let us know why. And if you've never seen it, let us know why too.
Right? Like, do you know anybody that like hates Home Alone?
No, but I guarantee you we will find one out there in the Twitterverse.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll throw it out there. But it's weird because I don't know. Most people, maybe there's like a whole contingent of people that just need to be brought together.
Well, I thought it was really weird because when I was looking at, it only has like a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it wasn't loved by the critics. But are you talking about audience rating?
No, I guess that's probably the critics one. I don't know what the audience rating is.
Yeah, I know it wasn't loved by the critics, but it's crazy because like Home Alone's run topped the box office when it released was like insane. Like it was number 1 like into the spring, almost summer. Because I believe it finished for, and it held this record for a long time. It was like the highest grossing live action comedy ever.
Yeah.
So, and I want to say that changed with like Deadpool or something.
Okay, so the audience score is 80, which still I think is kind of low for
especially
what I think is an amazing movie.
Yeah, you consider, what other movies probably have higher rating. Like Home Alone's way better than that movie.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But all right, that wraps up our discussion. So I hope, obviously we both had a chance to watch Home Alone, but I hope you enjoyed discussing. I know you and I both love discussing movies. Every time we get together, we pretty much get sidetracked talking about something we've seen.
Yeah.
So
you can find me at IndyCal5.
You can find me at Big Kid D-Man.
And you can just, reach out to the show at Film Comp Podcast and let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Let us know what you think about Home Alone. And let us know what you think about Dustin's obsession with Christmas.
I do love Christmas. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to catching up with you all next time.
Have a good night. Day. Morning.